So our special guest today is Phebe Novakovic, and let me give you a little bit of her background. She is somebody who actually went to high school in Northern Virginia and then finished in San Antonio, went to Smith College. After Smith College and after some work in a company around the Washington area, she went to work for the CIA. After doing that for a number of years, she then went to get her MBA from Wharton. And after that, she went to work at OMB and then the Pentagon, and recruited from the Pentagon to work at General Dynamics in 2001. And from there, she rose up to be the head of the Marine Systems, and in 2012 became the President and Chief Operating Officer. And in 2013, January of 2013, became the Chairman and CEO.
Boy, I must be old.
Okay. So General Dynamics is a company that is actually 117 years old. It goes back to the Holland Torpedo Boat Company, if I recall correctly. It's a company with a market capitalization of about $42.5 billion, revenues of about $31.5 billion, and earnings of about $2.5 billion, 100,000 employees. And since Phebe became the CEO, the stock has gone up by 100%. Yes, and the market cap.
Excuse me, but for those of you who are shareholders, thank you for believing in us. Go ahead.
And the market capitalization has gone up by about 77%. And she does all this from a headquarters based in West Falls Church of about 140 people. So 140 people in West Falls Church are running the 100,000 employees. So very impressive. So let me ask you a very serious question. All my questions are serious, but this is particularly serious.
By definition.
You know, if I am the co-CEO of a company and my stock has not gone up 100%, but if my stock had gone up 100%, I'd be on every TV show in the world bragging about it. How come you are relatively media shy?
So it's a conscious decision based in two parts. One, I think performance speaks for itself. In absence of performance, you really don't have anything to say. And I think results matter, and results are, at the end of the day, all that really does matter. So that's number one. Number two, I've lived in this town for a long time, and I've learned that it's best to fly underneath the radar screen. So we do that. We're a quiet company, and we pride ourselves on that. We try to be low maintenance. No fuss, no muss. And,
okay. So when you joined the company in 2001, did it seem realistic that a woman in a man-based industry, you would argue, some people would say all industries are male-based or male-dominated, but let's say this was particularly one that is male-dominated. Did you think a woman could become the CEO of a defense company?
So I have always worked in the national security environment, which was heavily male. I never really thought about the difference between men and women in the workplace, although we are different. So I didn't really think about the maleness of the organization. What attracted me to General Dynamics is that it was different. I'm not an engineer. I have not risen through the ranks from 25 years old. I've had, as you noted, a fairly unusual background. And the CEO and chairman of the time was a trial attorney from Chicago, and I thought, well, there's a bit of an iconoclastic culture here, and maybe there's a place for me. You know, so much in life is about finding your place, whether it's with your family, in your community, your nation, and in your company, and there was a place for me.
Okay, so do you think your background, having worked in government, helps you in your current position?
I think it does. From the outside looking in, government can often seem inexplicable at best, and incomprehensible at worst. But when you're inside the tent, you understand the particular and peculiar demands and requirements that really are visited upon and people who work in the government. So it gave me a sense of the trials and tribulations that they have and an intimacy with their processes.
So
and a bit of compassion.
Right. The stock price has done so well. Is it a focus of General Dynamics management to actually get the stock price up as opposed to focusing on other things? Is that by happenstance it happened, or is that really an area of your focus? So
we believe very heavily in creating shareholder value. And in my mind, you do that through excellent operations. So we are focused primarily on our operating performance, year in, year out. Because without operations, of course, and good operations, you don't have good earnings. And then the other half of that equation is the wise deployment of capital.
Right.
So to the extent that your businesses are making money, it's one of my jobs to ensure that I spend that cash wisely. And those two components of value creation has allowed us to grow the company. And we're laser focused on operating performance, laser focused.
So your last name is a Serbian name, is that right?
Novakovic and the other side of the Atlantic.
All right, so how many people pronounce it correctly the first time?
Well, Novakovic is the Americanization,
Okay.
but I have a fairly unusual first name, Phoebe, so that's pretty much all you need to know.
So your father came over when he was a teenager from Serbia and ultimately went into the U.S. Army Intelligence, is that right?
Air Force.
Air Force Intelligence. And so when you were growing up, did you have an interest in the military area?
Well, we spent a lot of, it was the height of the Cold War, and I grew up in Germany, a little bit in Italy, and you got a very real sense of being an American. And I think that along with my parents' values and the gratitude that my father felt for this country and in his, he came here at 17 with $50 in his pocket, 6 languages, but not English. Right. And the opportunities that this country afforded him were really inculcated to me at an early age, and so I really believe in serving the nation.
Okay, so you went to Smith College. I don't think that many people from Smith College are winding up in the CIA, so how did that...
No, pretty much not.
Right. So,
go figure.
But when you go to work at the CIA, can you tell your Smith College classmates or your parents that you're going to work at the CIA? What do you tell people?
We didn't say where we worked. We told them we worked for the government, and we're pretty amorphous about it. And there was some, when I resigned to go to business school, we were able to resign in open forum. So I told some of my friends, and they were sort of ticked off, but, a minor matter.
So can you tell us any undercover agent jobs you did while you were at the CIA? No.
Not a chance, and I think we have the Russian ambassador here,
right.
So that
okay.
wouldn't be smart.
Okay. All right, so I guess you won't tell us that. So, so tell us, you went to work, after you got your Wharton MBA, you went to work at OMB. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I needed a job, for starters. I had 2 children and was unemployed coming out of Wharton. Can't imagine why, because I was interviewing 8 months pregnant. So I wanted to go work in steel, because I like to make things. And I walked into this steel interview, and the guy took one look at me. His eyes went like this, and it was a quick interview.
Really? Okay.
So I also wanted to continue to serve. Okay. And so I joined OMB, and I was fortunate.
What administration was that?
I joined under George Sr. and then continued on into the Clinton years.
Clinton years, okay. So then you got recruited to work at the Pentagon by Secretary Cohen, or?
Secretary Cohen and John Hamre.
Okay. And you did that for a number of years. In what area? 4 years? Okay. So then...
And interestingly, well, you may not find this interesting, but it was interesting for me. My boss at the time was Rudy De Leon, and he and I stayed through the transition with the Rumsfeld administration, which was an interesting thing to see and experience.
Because Rumsfeld was so easy to work for, or?
I actually got along with him quite well. If you intellectually engaged with him and he didn't think that you were a pushover, you did okay. And of course, my Serbian would get up a couple times. So.
Okay. All right. So you decided to leave, and then did you interview a number of defense companies, and how did you happen to go to General Dynamics?
Well, because I thought that I actually might be able to, with a liberal arts background and this eclectic, career at best, that I might be able to do something there. I would have been the height of hubris to assume I ever could have been CEO. That was...
Okay, so you ultimately wound up to be the head of the Marine Systems Division, which is the division that makes submarines, right? Mm-hmm. So how long does it take to actually build a submarine?
For our attack submarines, it takes about 60 months.
And what do they actually cost to build?
About $2 billion or so.
$2 billion?
Dollars.
Okay, well that's cheap compared to an aircraft carrier, right?
Yes, but I have to be careful.
I was going to say that.
Sorry, Congressman, yes. Well, you're also our partners on the Virginia class. So.
Okay, so in the submarines, you're building now
2 a year, and we are gearing up for we're in the design for the replacement of the next ballistic missile submarine.
So these submarines, how many people typically, well, yes, maybe that's a state secret, how many people actually work on these submarines, but how many workers does it take to actually build one of these? Thousands
Several
of them?
thousand.
And you build them where?
Well, we build them in some parts down in assembly and some deliveries in Newport News, and then we build them in Groton, Connecticut, and Quonset Point, Rhode Island.
Okay. And so who actually decides the name of them? Like, they always seem to be named after famous government people, but
The government.
You don't get picked those names.
Not a who.
No. Do we have any submarines named after women?
Yeah. So next question.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess.
Actually, there are a few ships. We also make destroyers up in Bath, Maine, and at our San Diego shipyard, we build supply ships. Okay. And one of them was named Sacagawea.
Okay.
So there you go.
So one of your other divisions is your aircraft division. You own Gulfstream, and that's done reasonably well.
Mm-hmm, I'll say.
And why do you think that the big jets have sold so well? Because they've sold better than the smaller jets. You would think the opposite would be true, smaller jets being cheaper, but it seems like the bigger jets are doing quite well.
I think, when you're in the business aviation market, it's highly cyclical. And if you look at our company, we got a high beta because of the cyclicality on Gulfstream. And the defense cycles are slower, longer, more predictable. So what we have learned to do is be a very, very good cyclical. So when demand fluctuates, which it will on occasion, we cut production faster than the demand declines, keep that production curve lower, so you can keep your price up. So I think it was hard in 08, but we acted like a good cyclical. We cut back seriously on production, maintained a fair number of earnings, highest margins. We were up over 20% in margins.
I know, I bought some of them, so I realized that.
So that was all good and wholesome. And I think that these have been attractive tools for really business people around the world. As the world has gotten smaller, and U.S. and other multinational companies have to go to these places.
So we've discussed, I'm a very proud owner of one of your products, but as I mentioned to you, when I bought it, it was very good, but it had a map of where I was going to fly, and then it kept saying Mecca is X number of miles away. And I kept wondering, why do I need to know how far Mecca is and what the direction is? But I realized that there were some other buyers who didn't have the last name Rubenstein, so.
How insightful.
Right.
Well, you also pointed out, one of the first times I met you, that on the same screen, for some reason, we listed all the shipwrecks. So you knew where the Titanic went down, the Lusitania went down.
Yes, well, you have all the shipwrecks, but you didn't have any air crashes.
Gee, wonder why.
Subliminal, I guess. Okay, so that biz, where do you make? Real subtle. Where do you make those? Where do you make those planes?
Gulfstream in Savannah, Georgia. And we also own a business called Jet Aviation that it includes aircraft management, FBOs, and then it's headquartered in Basel, Switzerland, and we do completions on single and double aisle airplanes for heads of state, high net worth individuals.
So if somebody wants to, let's say, buys a 747 and they want to outfit it for a head of state, that can cost $100 or $200 million just to outfit a plane? Or?
It costs a lot.
A lot, okay. And
it's a good business.
So today, is there demand softening for Gulfstreams, or is it still in pretty good shape?
We have a solid backlog. Our order activity is active, so we're in pretty good shape.
So if somebody here wanted to buy one of your 650s,
oh, come see me.
They go for.
By the way, I was salesman of the quarter one quarter.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't get a commission.
So what do they go for people who might be interested in buying Gulfstream?
In the upper 60s.
60s, so 60
70, somewhere around there.
Okay, all right. So no discounts for anything.
Friends and family?
No discounts. Okay. So you have another division.
Like we don't own a Gulfstream, or we don't own a 650. That's because Gulfstream has to sell to us at cost.
Oh, really?
And they're paying customers out there, so.
So people
fly
buy,
550s.
well, people buy them are typically CEOs or heads of state who buy those expensive planes?
And high net worth individuals. Right. What we sell a lot to are, of course, multinationals, and they build out their fleet, and they need to replenish their fleet every maybe 5-6 years. And so we sell them a range of products from the 650 to the 550, depending on the missions. And then we have a 280 that is largely transcontinental.
So those planes go at roughly 94 Mach or so, 94% of the speed of sound. Do you have any plans to make supersonic planes?
The technology is there. There's no business case.
Oh, really? So nobody
There are a lot of regulation. There's a big investment, and the return, investments here, and the return is way out here because of the regulatory process that you have to go through to fly over.
The different businesses, the commercial jet business, you're not in that business. You're not planning to get into that business.
No.
Okay. And you have another division, the Combat Systems Division, which makes tanks, the Abrams tanks. So do we still need tanks in this day and age of cyber warfare? We still need tanks?
So the way wars have been won since we have been recording history is boots on the ground. And boots on the ground are protected by tanks. So the U.S. Tank capability is, I think, one of our national competitive advantages, and we upgrade it, and we make sure that it's capable of defending our country.
Okay, so it's the Abrams tank is the main one you're making?
Mm-hmm.
And,
it's the only U.S. tank.
So if you want to sell them, suppose somebody from Saudi Arabia calls up or some other country in the world and wants to buy them, is it hard to get the U.S. government to approve the sale of these?
It depends on the nation, obviously, and we only sell in accordance with U.S. policy. So there are tanks, U.S. tanks in Egypt, in Saudi, and scattered through other parts of the region. But typically, it takes a while to get the U.S. Get through the U.S. government approvals. But we have large manufacturing businesses in multiple countries, and particularly in Canada. And Canada has a wonderful export corporation that they call the Canadian Commercial Corporation. A handful of people that get right in with the Canadian companies, of which we're a large one, and help sell Canadian product. It's terrific, and very little carrying costs. So a lot of the contracts that we have are through the Canadian government, and the Canadian government to other foreign government.
So you often have to deal, I assume, with members of Congress because they often are appropriating money for some of the things that you build. So what is your view of members of Congress in terms of their understanding of what you do?
I think that there are some, particularly those who are on our committees, on the Defense Appropriation, Defense Authorization committees, that fully understand what we do and the criticality of what we do, and that the U.S. cannot fight and win wars and therefore protect our country without adequate supplies. There are others, unfortunately, who I think fail to understand the gravamen of what we do and the criticality of it. So, and there's almost an ideology, and it's irrespective of party.
So do you have to spend time lobbying members of Congress or people in the Pentagon or OMB to get approval for things? Where do you spend most of your time dealing with government officials?
Well, obviously with our customer, and then up on Capitol Hill, to just tell our story about what we're doing and what we're interested in, and ways that we think we're developing and things that we can do for the armed forces. And, and members of Congress have been very supportive. So we tend to have programs of record, and in Pentagon terms, that means they're established programs. We don't go up and ask for piggy-porky stuff.
You have a pretty healthy balance sheet, and you've made some very good acquisitions over the years. I think Gulfstream, you paid only $5 billion for it.
That turned out to be very
good acquisition.
Very creative.
So, you planning any acquisitions you could announce today?
That would be a shock to all the GD people here. We look again to invest our money cautiously and where we can ensure a return, and we're always open, but so far I haven't seen too many attractive companies at good prices.
So the defense budget is probably going to be level for a while, I assume. It's not going to probably go up the way it was when we were in the middle of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Is that a problem, or am I wrong? The defense budgets will actually be going up in your view?
I think defense spending will increase, and I believe that in the United States, defense spending is driven by either the threat or the perception of a threat, and the world is not a safe place. There's some bad people in it and doing some bad things, and so I think we will see some growth, certainly not of the, as we saw percentage increases in the hot wars. But if you think about this, the land forces, particularly the Army and the Marine Corps, have been in combat for a very long time, and combat is about consumables. You're burning through your equipment, you're using, you're aging your equipment at a much faster rate. So now they need to begin to recapitalize, and they need to think about how they build for the future, and that's in the land forces where we are. The Navy has been increasing its shipbuilding funding, thanks for the support from Congress, prodigiously over the last few years, and so we participate in that as well.
So a lot of people who work in government, I guess eventually they would like to make higher salaries, so they aspire to go into the private sector. So what would be your advice for somebody who works at the Pentagon or Congress or OMB who wants to go in government? How do you rise up? What are the skill sets that it takes to rise up and be successful in the private sector?
Well, I think in my experience, I never aspired to a particular position. I did whatever job I had in front of me to the best of my ability. I shone with whatever reflected glory I had, and that's what I focused on. And opportunities then open up for you if you're a hard worker and a good person. You play well in the sandbox. You know, we have an expression in the company: nobody's good enough to be a jerk. So it's, you know, it's about teamwork, you know, and I'm a big believer in the criticality of the team. I also believe in a leadership style that's fashioned around a servant leader. And we talk a lot about that internally, that we have the privilege of leading those whom we serve. And we also talk a lot internally about our ethos. And as this management team came in, we spent a lot of time talking about ethos. And ethos is a more powerful word than ethic because it means your fundamental moral character. And we defined a series of character traits that we wanted to aspire to. We were going to treat ourselves that way, our shareholders, our customer, our employees. And that has been an important part of bringing this cohesive team together, because we're strong together. You know, you can use whatever metaphor, but if we're all in the foxhole with our guns, you know, firing at the same point, we're going to win.
So you're the CEO of General Dynamics, and Marilyn Houston is the CEO of Lockheed Martin. Is there opportunity for men to get ahead in this business?
Yes, we're very supportive of men. You know, isn't it the beauty of being human is that we can see all of our humanity, and I think that, you know, men and women bring different things to the table, but yes, I think men have plenty of upward potential.
But when you're dealing with the Pentagon and you're dealing with your own executives, are you typically only woman in the room, or is that not the case any longer?
No, it is often the case, not exclusively, certainly not when I started out in the early 80s, but which then you'd kind of look around, and there was never a line in the ladies' room. So that was my first indication that we got more women. There was a line. But yeah, you know, and I'm often the only woman, and I tease that there may be a lot of alpha males in the group, but there's only one alpha female. Right. So I remind them gently.
So what is the greatest pleasure of being the CEO of General Dynamics, and what's the greatest frustration of it?
Well, I think the greatest pleasure is the privilege of serving. I am devoted and relentlessly loyal to the people of General Dynamics. And I care desperately about what we do and what we do for our country. And there's a lot of psychic energy that you get, and I'm a big patriot. There's a lot of psychic energy that you get out of performing for those men and women who are keeping us safe. You know, it's almost the height of self-indulgence to think about things that I don't like about the job, because I'm just frankly lucky. So, you know, I'm not a big early morning person, so for you, I'm up this morning.
All right, well, thank you. So, well, let me ask you, suppose the President of the United States, the next President of the United States, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or whoever it might be, I don't know who it would be, he or she says to you, you know, we need somebody who's worked in government and who's worked in the private sector to be the Secretary of Defense, and you're a great patriot. Would you be willing to be Secretary of Defense or go into government?
Well, I think I've served my time, and I think that I can continue to add value to our national security where I am, and I'm happy, and I've got more work to do there. I'm not ready to pack up my dolls and dishes yet.
All right, so that's probably not right now.
Not for a long time. And I'm getting older too, so you know, when you get to be a certain age, you're now looking at the end of the runway, right?
So General Dynamics has been very helpful to the Kennedy Center. The president of the Kennedy Center is here. Deborah Rutter is right there. Thank you, Deborah. And you have been a big supporter of the opera program. So do you actually like opera, or how do you know, I mean, how did you happen to support opera as opposed to other things at the Kennedy Center?
It isn't because I can sing. In fact, I'm tone deaf. But I love opera because I think the majesty of the human voice as a musical instrument is amazing. But my Serbian grandmother in the old country before the war would go to Vienna for the opening of the season. And she'd spend the season attending various operas. And when I was little, she'd put on the Victrola and we'd listen to opera. And I think she was one of the great disappointments in me, and I'm sure she had many, but one of them was that I have a very loud voice and I really stink. Oh. So I have honored both her memory and my love of that form of human expression through supporting the opera and our people. You know, it's interesting, our people, we get folks from all over our company coming to the opera.
Well, it's great, and I highly recommend the Ring Cycle for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. Your parents are alive. They live in Villanova, Pennsylvania, so they must be very proud that you rose up to be the CEO of General Dynamics. Do they brag about it? Do they come down and ask for a ride on your Gulfstream or something? Or?
Well, I think they are proud, but I was taught to, I was raised with great humility, and if you understand your own humanhood, it keeps you very humble. So lest I should, they're proud, but they also are mindful that it's most important to be a good person. So if my mother in particular thinks I'm not being a good person, I still get smacked around. Okay. Maybe not physically, but you know, I get the well.
So you have 3 daughters.
I
Are
do.
any of them interested in the aerospace defense industry, or?
No, I thought one of them wanted to join the Army, and oh boy, but she decided not to because she saw that all of the jobs she was interested in were male only. Like she wanted to be a SEAL. She's 5'1". Right. But anyway, I think we got over that part. But they all do believe in service, and I think to those who much is given, much is expected, and my children are fortunate. So I expect them to give back in whatever way they can.
So they must be proud that you're the CEO. They run around telling your friends you're the CEO of General Dynamics, or they don't do that?
They do, but they also keep me very humble. If they don't like what I'm wearing, I hear about it. If my hair isn't good, I hear about it. If I said something stupid or misuse, have a malapropism, or misspell something, boy, they're all over it.
So you're obviously very good at doing interviews, so might I suggest you do more public interviews? You won't do that in the future because it'd be good for your company, don't you think?
If and when I thought that it would benefit General Dynamics, that I would, and by the way, I do get out just to the investors. Okay. It's not that I'm cloistered in a nunnery. But as I said, I have a philosophy that you just, in this town, you're better off staying low. And I love talking, I was teasing with you earlier that there are 4 things I can talk about ad nauseum. My 3 children and General Dynamics. So I could be up here all day. You guys got all day? It's a labor of love.
Well, I want to thank you for coming. This is a very interesting conversation, and I think you've done a great job for your shareholders. I wondered if I wanted to buy General Dynamics stock, would I be able to get another 100% increase, you think, in the next year or 2?
It's what we aspire to.
Okay.
A year or 2, that's a little, you know, but you got to continue to grow, and that's the compact that we have with our shareholders.
Well, thank you for the great
I'd be
job.
happy for you to invest.
Okay.
And
well,
get another Gulfstream.
Well, I'll take a look at it. You have any discounts?
Yeah, for you, yes.
All right, okay, I'll think about it. Phebe, I want to thank you very much for coming this morning, and let me give you a gift. Thank you.